Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Looks over the middle, second guesses, fires, throws. Does he make the catch in the end zone? Yes! Touchdown! Oladipo to win it.
Another one!
He got
Another
it!
one! Another one!
Huge hole! He's at the 30! He's gonna go! 10, 5, touchdown! Jonathan Taylor!
Worked out by Burke. Bounces into Cody. Puts it up. Scores!
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome in on this Wednesday. We made it to Hump Day. We're halfway there. Dylan Senn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette with us. We've got a big show lined up. Dylan, how you doing, brother?
I'm good, Jim. I'm good. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Lots going on today. Cal Neddenriep will join us as he usually does. Rob Cassidy, Rivals National Recruiting Analyst, and Ray Miller, the coach from Montverde Academy, will be joining us as we'll be talking about new commitment, Jalen Hood-Schifino for Indiana. Big get. As that boosted them into the top 10, Dylan, overall for their recruiting coming up. Not bad for a guy who was being questioned about recruiting and the ability to get that job done.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing here. I mean, obviously, since he's gotten the job, he's cashed in on the momentum from that hire. I think that's always the important thing for a new coach, is to take advantage of kind of the good feeling you get from getting hired, from kind of shaking things up. And I think that's the important part for him, is he's really taking advantage of that. And he's gotten some, I mean, even before Jalen Hood-Schifino committed, he'd already gotten a commitment from Tamar Bates. He'd gotten Caleb Banks to come in. He'd actually gotten CJ Gunn to recommit. So he'd taken advantage of that good feeling. And now with Jalen Hood-Schifino, they have a top 10 class in 2022, and they might not be done. So we'll see how that plays out, but it's good to see Mike Woodson kind of taking advantage of the good feeling that comes out of his hire.
Tony said he watched the video and that he obviously seems to be a great kid, holds his mother and sister close to his heart. Well, that's always a good thing to see that. So I'm glad to have everybody along this morning, Tony, Dwayne, everyone. But yeah, I agree with you. Lots to talk about there. The alliance continues to be a big topic of discussion. Did the SEC, I'm not going to say shoot themselves in the foot, because they're not going to get hurt, but they certainly are not going to have the clout that they thought that they had after this alliance has come together. I think but I don't know that if it was geared towards that. I think they were just trying to make a stronger conference, and now they've got that. I don't know, they've added two better teams, but I forget who said it yesterday, but they said, well, that's going to cause two other teams in your conference to not be as good. There's just not room for everyone to be great. So, and then you've got Texas, who couldn't do much in the Big 12. How in the world are they going to go to the SEC and succeed? I mean, that's kind of a risk for Texas. And because they've been out on an island for a long time as the lone star in their state. Texas A&M, of course, is there, but Texas is the lone star. No pun intended. We're pun intended. Heck, might as well do that. But I don't know, man. Is this a good move for Texas?
I mean, that's the question, right? Is they feel like it expands their recruiting so that they can move deeper into the South and get some players from some areas of the SEC where they had not previously been able to recruit quite as well. And that's kind of the upside for them. But yeah, the downside is that they have better competition, and they weren't particularly thriving against the competition they already had in a weaker conference. They have not been nationally relevant for going on a decade now. They've lost at least 4 games for 11 straight years. And so it's not clear how that shakes out for Texas, right? They had really good seasons during the Vince Young and Colt McCoy eras in the mid 2000s. And outside of that, there hasn't been a whole lot for Texas football in the last 30 years or so. So there's something of it's a question of how good Texas can really be, despite having all the money in the world. And so you wonder how that's going to play out when they get to the SEC, where there's just so much talent.
Did they used to have a coach named, what was his name? Mac Brown, maybe?
Yeah.
That they fired?
They did, although from everything I've read from people who watch Texas, even now as he's come back to North Carolina, he had to go. From everything I've read, he left the cupboard pretty bare in his last few seasons there.
Yeah, I was just kidding a little bit, but because you see that happen a lot. I think North Carolina is way overrated. Way overrated. They play in the weak ACC, and they did nothing last year. And they're ranked 5th, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me! It's ridiculous. I don't understand how people can be voters who should know better. How they can be so fooled by that, or why and what did North Carolina do to make them think that they're the 5th best team in the country? They did nothing besides not get their butts beat by good teams because they don't play good teams.
I think the biggest thing is that they have Sam Howell, and I think a lot of voters that's what they look at. They look at Sam Howell, they see that he's one of the top quarterbacks available in the draft next year, and everyone's projecting him that way. And they say, oh well, they must be a good team because so many of these other teams have questions at quarterback. And I mean, they have been on an upward trajectory under Mac. Obviously, they're better than they were when he took the job. And year 3 is often the year when a program takes off under a new coach. So I can understand that, and they do have a good recruiting class coming in. But you're right. I think they lose so much of the skill position talent that really made them go last year. And even last year, they lost the games they played against the really good teams. They lost Notre Dame by 2 touchdowns. They lost to Texas A&M in the bowl game by 2 touchdowns. And they lost to Florida State, who was just not good at all. And so you question what the next step that North Carolina can take is, because they do have an easier schedule, but they do have to play Notre Dame again this year. I believe they have to play Clemson. So you wonder what the next step is. And I think they're a little bit overrated as well.
Then, and getting back to the alliance, nothing really came out of this announcement. I didn't get a lot of it out of it. I think the only thing that people really want to know is, are you all going to play each other? How's that going to work? That's the biggest questions, and that's the one thing, the furthest thing that they are from getting accomplished because of scheduling. Schedules are out so far, travel. Then you've got the Big Ten Conference that plays 9 conference games already. So teams don't have room on their schedule to add a forced game unless you're going to give up. I don't think Big Ten teams are not going to give up another game. They've already lost one. The SEC, they have 4 non-con games that they get to build in. That also is a difference, and you hear Pat Fitzgerald talk about it every year, and he's right about the inequality of these conferences. Until everybody is on the same page doing the same thing, and that means playing the same amount of conference games, then it's not the same. I think that's the first place they have to get on the same page, is conferences playing the same amount of conference games.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing we did hear from that the press conference yesterday, which quite frankly could have just been an email. Of course. There was so little actual tangible information to announce. It was very much we're presenting a united front against the SEC. But
it must have come from the Big Ten office. I'm certain of that then.
But yeah, it was basically, it seemed like what they might try to do, and they talked about this for football and basketball, is maybe pare back the Big Ten schedule, go back to 8 conference games, go back to maybe 18 conference games in basketball, and add some games with these other conferences in place of that extra conference game. So you're not playing another conference game, but you're playing a Power 5 team in that way. And that's something they discussed. Again, there's no details. It's nothing set in stone, because it seems like what they're going to try to do is they're going to try to let existing contracts expire with games that are already on the schedule. But there are contracts out, as we know. IU is scheduled to play Notre Dame in 2030. So,
but that works right into this, though. That works right into the alliance.
It does. That's true. But yeah, the question is, because some of these teams have games scheduled out 5-10 years, how long do you wait to start scheduling games if you're going to in the alliance? So that's the question going forward.
And the conference, the TV conference, I think the Big Ten has 2 more years left on their current contract. And so that's what the wait is, to get these contracts out of the way so they can come together with a joint force of bargaining power. ESPN it has too much power, and it does. So Fox is going to make a run at ESPN, and this could be the deal that turns Fox. I'm not going to say over ESPN, but man, if Fox ended up with all 3 of those conferences, it's a lot of games. That's a lot of games, a lot of powerhouse. I mean, if UCLA comes back, USC, you've got teams on the West Coast that are Oregon that are very good and very good programs. So they're waiting for these contracts to expire so they can bring that together and make it a lot better.
And that's a significant question right now. Then that because the ACC network is under the ESPN umbrella. So the question is, when that contract expires, will the ACC try to bring the Big Ten and the Pac-12 into the ESPN orbit, or will it go the other way and the ACC will try to go to Fox? And I think that's a question going forward as well, because ESPN already has the SEC.
Right, and the ACC network, that's an agreement that when would that expire? I think that's a question.
That's a great question.
I don't think that their goal is to get more from ESPN. I think it's to get away from ESPN because they're controlling bowl games. They're controlling too much of the TV, the revenue, the conference revenues. Oklahoma and Texas, the Big 12, their lifeline is hanging in the balance because of the $160 million that Texas and Oklahoma would have to pay them if they tried to leave early, which that they're not going to want to stay until 2025 to make this marriage happen. But to do that would cost them a lot of money unless the conference disappears, which ESPN would love to see because they also have a big contract with the Big 12.
Yeah, I think that's important as well. And so there's so much going on here. I just looked it up. Apparently, the ACC ESPN contract runs through like the 2030s. So I don't know. Someone is going to have to pay through the nose to get out of that contract. And just like Oklahoma and Texas, I believe you're absolutely right that they're not going to want to wait around for 5 years in a conference that doesn't want them anymore. So they're going to have to pay through the nose to get out of that conference going into 2022 or whenever they want to go there. So that is going to be one of the main subplots starting now, basically, is when they might pull the trigger on that. So that's a question going forward as well.
And then of course we've got the Notre Dame based something. I was trying to make that out of NBC. It didn't work, but Notre Dame has their own network basically with NBC, Ed points out, and Texas created their own network that I'm sure runs through ESPN as well. Does that go away? Do they keep that? I don't know how to keep that.
I would think they
to sustain it.
Yeah, that's the question. I would think that they make a bid to keep it, and it's just a question of maybe ESPN absorbs it and they pay a certain amount or something like that. But yeah, Notre Dame is not. I don't think Notre Dame is part of the alliance. They're affiliated with the ACC for all these sports, but I would guess that Notre Dame was not really part of the alliance discussions. Otherwise, Swarbrick would have been out there with those commissioners.
We got to take a quick break. Coming up next, we've got Coach Ray Miller from Montverde Academy. He knows a lot about Jalen Hood-Schifino. We'll talk to him next here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by Andy Moore Honda. Back after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, Hoosier fans.
Hey, he has the link in his email, and I texted him, but I have not heard from him. If you want to message him yourself just to make sure.
All right. Ooh, it's getting warm in here. The lights. I
think today's supposed to be the hottest day of the year so far.
Man,
high at 95 down here.
I didn't. Monday, I had enough stuff to do, thank goodness. But I did not believe. I'm like, what am I going out there for? What am I going? That was a day I felt terrible too.
Oh yeah.
Man, it is not charging. Crap. What else is going on, Dylan? How you been? How's it going?
Oh, not bad. I mean, I've been all over the place, as you know. I'm going to be at IU tomorrow to talk to the running backs and stuff. But yeah, I've just been kind of all over the place getting college football preview stuff ready. And then this is I'm covering the Tin Caps this week. This is their second to last home series of the season. They have basically about 2.5 weeks of this, 3 weeks now of the season left. So we're all over the place.
That seems hard to believe. Baseball over.
Yeah. And it's actually funny because minor league baseball is going later than usual this season because it started later. So we would actually be about a week left in the season if it was a regular year, but they pushed it back 2 weeks.
All right, I'm bringing this back in.
Tender steaks and seafood. Sam's Ale House in Carmel and on 86th Street in Indy have a long list of craft beers and all of the right foods to go with. Plan a day on the links at Eagle Point in Bloomington, then stay for dinner at Sam's Clubhouse. Sam's Restaurants, professionals in the art of food and drink.
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sellersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry.
Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back here on this Wednesday. Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Dylan Sin from Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette with me as always. We're hoping that Ray Miller from Montverde Academy will be joining us shortly. He is a coach down at that knows Jalen Hood-Schifino quite well. Of course, we've seen his talent. We've seen the highlights. We've watched it. This is a good get for Mike Woodson in Indiana. Dylan, another good get. It pushes them into the top 10 overall in the recruiting class, and they're probably not done. But this is just more high-level talent. And coming from guys that come from Montverde or those type of places, they are ballers, man. They are ready to go, and they're guys that can a lot of times be, I don't know if I want to use the word impact player, but they're going to play soon, quickly when they arrive. They're not going to be sitting on the bench. And that Jalen Hood-Schifino, definitely one of those type players. Just a good-looking guard. I mean, just a prototypical guard, 6'5", great range, skills on both sides of the guard side, really. But his coach talked that he's probably better at the point, which that's a 6'5" point guard. That's a luxury for most schools.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that it's important to note is you said he has skill on both sides of the ball. His coach said he's one of the best on-ball defenders in the entire country in his class. So that is exactly the type of player that Mike Woodson wants, is a guy who can handle the ball, who's big, long, athletic, and can guard 3 positions, it seems like. So that's a huge get for Indiana. It fits what Mike Woodson wants to do. And he is, I believe, as you said, it seems like he's going to come in and, assuming he signs, he's going to come in and play right away. The question, the things that could change that are what Xavier Johnson and Rob Finney do with their extra year of eligibility that they have because of COVID. But I would expect him to come in and play almost immediately. And so that this is going to be a significant help for Indiana sooner rather than later, it sounds like.
And anytime I get we see something like that, the first question that comes to me is people asking about someone like Christian Lander, and I'm like, man, he's going to be fine. He was brought in too early, and it needs to grow. And I think that was evident last year, and it's still evident. But I think he's going to be a lot closer than people realize. I think he's going to benefit from having players like this around. It's going to make him better. It's going to make him a better player. So I think that this is a positive for players like Christian in the regard.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it actually shows one of the what Mike Woodson said one of the first times, one of the first press conferences he had was that when he goes out on the recruiting trail, he's not going to tell guys, oh, this is your position to get them to commit. He's going to say, I'm going to recruit on top of you, and then you're going to compete for the job. And he wants guys that want to do that. And Christian Lander, quite frankly, to me, seems like the type of guy that wants to do that. And so, and he's a very competitive guy and we know that because he went to IU a year early, specifically so he could develop at the college level, and he wants that kind of competition. So I think that'll be fun to watch. I mean, having two guys that can play point guard is never going to be a bad thing at the college level. So if Christian Lander breaks out the way that IU fans hope he does this year, you have both of those guys next year. That's a luxury.
Absolutely. And then Jalen Hood-Schifino coming in. You've got a lot of new guards on this team, a lot of which we haven't seen yet. Patrick Stewart, he's been here a year and a half. We still haven't seen him, or a year. We still haven't hardly seen him at all. You got Xavier Johnson, of course, who we played well in the Bahamas, but we still haven't seen a lot from this team. Not many people have. So it's going to be interesting to see how they come out and weld together. We've seen it. It looked like they did a heck of a job in the Bahamas. When you can take on a team that has been together for a long time, that's a statement. So we know that they're doing pretty well on the defensive side. I think the offense will come. Mike Woodson talked about wanting to get the defensive set first. He obviously did, and the offense will follow. I know they didn't shoot the ball that well, but I think that they're probably focused more on the defense and learning all the newness. And I think this team will be fine when it comes to shooting. You've seen Miller Kopp. You know that he can put it in, and I think these other guys can shoot as well. That's not going to be a problem. Ryan mentions Parker Stewart. He's obviously a shooter. So I think that this is going to be I don't know where they're going to finish because I don't know what the Big Ten is going to be like this year. But I think that they're going to be a top 4 team in the Big Ten. I've said that, and I still stick with that right now.
Yeah, it's definitely going to take a leap to get there, but you feel like there's been a leap in talent since Mike Woodson took the job. I do think that the shooting to me still remains a concern. There was a little bit of rust there in the Bahamas. Miller Kopp does seem to be like the only guy that's a sure thing in that category right now, but that's one more sure thing than Indiana had last year, which is helpful. So yeah, I think if you get two more guys maybe that can really hit the three from the outside, I think Indiana's going to be just fine. Trace looks like he's having. I think the biggest thing that came out of the Bahamas to me was that it just seemed like everyone, and they said it on social media, everyone seemed to be having such a good time. They seemed to be having so much fun. And I think there just wasn't a whole lot of fun going on the last year or two or even 3, where it just seemed like it was a slog. Every game was a slog, and I think they're just having a little bit more fun now. And I think maybe that's just more of a vibes thing. I don't know, but it's possible that actually plays a significant role in how successful this team is, because maybe they enjoy playing a little bit more.
Give a shout out to Geno Brooks, Hoosier down in Arizona, joining us, man. You got to get up. He had to get up early to join us here, talking about a huge get for the IU team. But yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot for joining us. We appreciate you. But yeah, and Indiana now in the top 10 composite rankings. I don't think they're finished. That's another thing. They're not done. Of course, Dor Clowney is out there. I don't know where they are with him. It's hard to get a read. I'm not sure if they're behind on. It seems like they may be a little behind on him. Alabama seems high on his list, but It's hard to tell. It's early. He'll make a decision this year, but would be another great addition. But Indiana is probably not done recruiting, but with the transfer portal, it's like it's not ever going to be a problem, really. You can always, it's like going to the grocery store now. Just go down aisle 5 and it's down on the left. Oh, you need a 6'5" guard. Oh, that's over on aisle 6 on the lower part. It's how I see the transfer portal.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think if you look at this roster, the problem in 2022 going forward would be big guys if the roster stayed the exact same as it is now, assuming Trace leaves to the NBA after this year. There wouldn't be a whole lot of depth in the big spots, but that could change, as you said. Clowney could come in, or they could get someone from the transfer portal. There is very likely that this team in 2022 will not look the same as it's projected to right now based on just the commitments they have and the players on the roster. So that's important.
Obviously Noah Clowney is a recruit that Indiana's trying to get right now, but I think that they're pretty well covered. That's the thing. You don't know what you're really going to need. You think you do, but you don't ever really know. Next year, you know some guys that are probably going to leave, and maybe you have discussions and saying, "Now we're expecting you to leave next year," and when you tell them that, so you can make plans, because it is becoming more and more difficult on the coaching side, because you've got to fill these spots, and you don't want to be left high and dry. You don't want to have to do this after the fact. You want to have a clear plan laid out. Every coach does, to know what you have, because you want it to be a part of what your vision is.
Yeah. I think that's exactly right. It's much more difficult for coaches, because it's easier to go out and get a replacement, but it's more difficult to kind of keep your roster continuous without kind of making some kind of plan for when these guys leave. And then if they decide they don't want to leave, then you have to make a decision about whether you kind of say, well, we need you to leave, which is not something you ever want to do as a coach, or you'd say, well, then how do we change things up to make sure that we have an extra spot for you, which can sometimes be difficult to do on the fly. So yeah, it's difficult to plan. You really need to be flexible. And so far, it seems as though Mike Woodson has shown that. We haven't seen him go through a whole recruiting cycle yet, so we don't know. And things could significantly change after the end of this season. We'll know more about that as the season goes on. But yeah, it seems so far like he's been pretty flexible. And I think that's going to be really, really important for a coach going forward.
Absolutely. Let's see. I want to make sure we're not at a break. Cal Neddenriep coming up next. High school football is off and running. I know that got up your way, so you had plenty to do last week. This week as well. I can't believe high school football is here, but then again, we're a week and a half away from, well, Indiana kicking off, but college football this weekend 0. It's like it's a new soft drink. College football's new soft drink, weekend 0. But Illinois and Nebraska kicking college football off. I find that very interesting, because you got two horrible teams, but there was a very riveting story here. You've got Brett Bielema, who's coming back to the Big Ten from the SEC, and you've got big bad Scott Frost, whose job is in peril right now, I think, for a number of reasons, most importantly because he hasn't produced. But now you add the fact that his off the field antics of taking his team and avoiding the COVID protocols and basically hiding things from his school, yada, yada. But he's in a bit of hot water too. So I think it's an interesting game to watch. If Nebraska loses to Illinois, that does not set up well for their season. No. That's a game you can't lose. And, Brett Bielema would love nothing more than to come in and win his opening game. Oh, man. And create possibly a rivalry with Nebraska. Does Illinois have a football rivalry with anybody?
They have Northwestern, which is they call they have a trophy for it. I don't know. I don't remember exactly what it's called, but that's kind of the rivalry that they go back and forth with.
Yeah,
neither of those teams.
That's not real rivalry. I think that's a manufactured rivalry.
Yes, but that is the closest thing Illinois has. I mean, the problem is that Illinois hasn't been good for going on a decade now. So it's hard for them to have any rivals when whoever their rival would be is beating them every year. So it would help if they could go out and beat Nebraska and kind of get some bad blood going there pretty early.
Absolutely. And then, of course, Indiana playing at Iowa the week after that, a gigantic game, a top 20 matchup. There's so much riding on that. I feel bad for Indiana in a way because that game is getting more and more hype on the Indiana side because it means way more to Indiana than it does Iowa. Let's be honest. If Iowa loses that game, they're not going to take a big hit. They're like, well, people are going to say, well, Indiana is good. If Indiana loses that game, it's same old Indiana. They can't go on the road. It's a different mindset on how that game comes out. So the importance lies differently for both teams. But for Indiana, with how their schedule is laid out, man, if they get that win, you come back home and 2 games later, you play a top 10 Cincinnati team. It could be we talked about it a lot, a season of unparalleled success for the Hoosier football program. But it all starts on the road in a Big Ten country in which you can't, that's not a tougher start. You just can't start a season any tougher on the road at a traditionally good Big Ten program.
Yeah, and I think that's really important is that these guys, Indiana has remade its roster in the offseason with transfers. They brought in so many impact players that they feel like they're going to play big minutes this year, get a lot of snaps, and feel like they're going to contribute. Well, there is no time to ease in. They are going to be thrown immediately into the fire. And same with Michael Penix coming off that ACL injury. He says he's healthy. He says he's ready to go. He seems strong in fall camp. There is no time to ease back in or kind of get your bearings. You are going to be under pressure from the first moment the season begins. And so they are going to have to be ready. I think Tom Allen has said it all offseason. He said it at Big Ten Media Days. He said it during fall camp. We have to be ready to go. We feel like that the Iowa game kind of gives us a little bit of something to look forward to. You're not playing Idaho week 1. You're playing Iowa, and they're going to need to be ready. Absolutely.
We got to take a break. Cal Neddenriep will join us after that, and we'll talk about what's coming up this week in high school football. Back with more on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by Andy Mora Honda of Bloomington. Back after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Whether you're looking for...
So at one point during that segment, I was on the phone with Ray Miller, and I was walking him through how to get on StreamYard, and he sounded like he was about to get on right at 9:30. He's like, "Oh, he was talking about setting up his camera or whatever," and he never joined. So I don't know what happened.
Well, just talk to him again and tell him whatever time. I told him that I texted him, said we'll get you in up till we go off. So he could come on like it's straight up at 10, right?
We don't have anybody at 10. We have Rob at 10:20.
Interestingly, maybe we should note when we talk about this college football schedule this weekend, the same day Illinois plays Nebraska, Fresno State plays a game as well. So we can so Kalen DeBoer, former IU offensive coordinator, will get his first crack at it this year. I think they're playing UConn.
Yeah, somebody mentioned that the other day. It may have been John, but yeah, they get to open up, get some love, some TV love.
Yeah, and they get TV love the first 2 weeks because they play UConn in week 0 and that'll be a big, like, obviously everyone's going to be watching because it's football. And then week 1 they play at Oregon at 2:00 in the afternoon Eastern time. So they are going to be
Oregon. Hello.
Prime TV. Yeah, exactly. They're going to be prime TV watching for the first couple weeks of the season here.
That's how you build a program. I remember Louisville used to play those Tuesday night games.
Yeah.
Back in the day, man, they play. I'm like, it worked. They didn't care whatever it took to get on TV.
I'm going to be at Ball State season opener on Thursday the 2nd. That'll be fun.
Who are they
They're
playing?
the favorites in the MAC this year, aren't they?
They won the MAC last year. I don't think they're the favorites this year because they've lost a fair amount of talent. But they won it last year, and they won their first bowl game in program history. Ended the season ranked 23rd, 7-1.
Okay. I hate to. I guess we can't not talk about the kid that got killed. Did you see that football player?
Indiana football player?
Saturday morning, as the Western High School football coaches met to decompress and plan ahead for Friday night's season opener.
All new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by Sam's Family of Restaurants. Fresh, local, family. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat coming to you here on this Wednesday. Dylan Sin with me from Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. John, are we waiting for Kyle?
Yeah, I'll reach out to him, make sure he's still good, but he should be here shortly.
Boy, things can. That's what happens in live when you're live, baby. Things can go awry. But week 2 of high school football underway this week. What are the bigger games up your way?
Yeah, we have several big games. The biggest one would be Bishop Dwenger and Northside, and then Carroll against Snyder. Those are 2 big games in the Summit Athletic Conference, the big conference up here in Fort Wayne. The SAC was terrific in week 1. Snyder won on a last-second field goal. Bishop Luers, a 2A school, beat Carroll, a much larger school, 38-31 in a terrific game. Luers is one of the favorites for the state championship in Class 2A. So that they announced their presence, and it is that those are 2 games this week that are really going to do a lot to kind of show where we are, because the first week it was all kind of a jumble. There just seemed like a lot of teams that could be very, very good. We're still not sure. So Snyder, Carroll, and Bishop Dwenger Northside are 2 games that are really going to determine a lot about how this season plays out the rest of the way.
Yeah, and that always plays into the overall picture. But the big boy 6A football down in Indianapolis, most of the 6A schools are around the Indianapolis area. Is that right?
Yeah, most of them, not all of them, but a fair amount.
Kyle.
Yeah.
Hey, Kyle, how you doing, brother?
Hey, good. How are you guys?
Good. Dylan Sin with us. We're just talking about week 2 of high school football coming up. Of course, that means you're going to be out with your jogging shoes on or running shoes, going all over the place. How many games do you actually try to get to on a Friday night, or do you just focus on one?
Me personally?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I just in the newspaper business, or at least for me, I know we can only be at one. You're keeping stats and covering one game pretty much. And, we try to send out we have a lot of people covering different games on a Friday, but we're not in the helicopter flying around like Anthony Calhoun to different games. So.
Yeah. Hey, I remember when I was in TV, we didn't have a helicopter, but we had to try to get to as many games as we could just to get highlights. And every time you're like, please do something good. Please do something good. And you'd be there for 10, 15 minutes and nothing. And as soon as you leave, they'd score a touchdown, of course. But
I was walking the sideline with Dave Calabro Friday for a while. And I know TV's different. They're not covering it necessarily, from the same way we are.
Right.
But we only, unless I'm doing some sort of different story, which is pretty rare, I'm pretty much set at one game every Friday.
Dave Fred Calgill, I broke into the TV business under him down in Louisville, WLKY. He's been the sports anchor, sports director there for, I don't know now, 30 years maybe. But I think he was on the sidelines of the Carmel Trinity game. And I don't know if he got wiped out or what happened to him, but now he's home with a knee injury. I'm thinking, as soon as I saw that, I'm like, I could see what happened. I'm like, must have been on the sideline and got taken out from the side. You see it happen to coaches all the time. But, man, I'm like, wow, it's just dangerous for everybody down there.
There was a kid next to me. He is a kid. He's a high school kid. Does a lot of video around here, and I was talking to him Friday night. I was at the Westfield Cathedral game, and he was kind of kneeling down with his video camera. And all of a sudden, there's a play on the sideline, and he was in a position where he couldn't really back up. Luckily, he kind of got sideswiped and not completely knocked backwards. But it happens fast down there, and I'm not as fast. I usually go up in the press box now to cover games, but I prefer to be down in the sideline. You just hear more, you feel like you're more involved, or kind of it's a better perspective, I think. I used to always walk the sideline. Then once Twitter and online, we used to do a live chat, so I'd have to be up in the press box. But Friday I was back on the sideline. Last year I kind of gone back to doing that more often now, but it is, you kind of forget like how, close to the action you are. And all of a sudden there's a guy coming up the sideline, and you're having to high step it to get out of the action. So, but yeah, it can be a little tricky down there sometimes.
Absolutely. Week 2 coming up. Actually, coming out of week 1, anything any shockers for you out of week 1?
Yeah. I mean, there's always a handful of surprises. I think, Bishop Chittard getting beat by Brebeuf, that was around here. That's always, Brebeuf rarely, I think twice since like 1976 have they beat Chittard. So it's pretty rare. They're rivals. They play every year. But it doesn't happen very often, but, I would say, the game I covered, not necessarily a surprise, but Cathedral's defense was just really, really dominant. I think they're going to be it really should be fun to see again, then play Center Grove at the end of the season. Just a regular season game, but, to kind of see how they stack up against each other. It really could be, I think, those two, kind of like last year, both being undefeated going into the regular season finale. So I'm looking forward to seeing that play out. There was a handful of other kind of surprising scores. A little bit surprising. I thought Brownsburg beating Ben Davis, not a huge shock necessarily, but I thought I picked Ben Davis to win that game. So Brownsburg, new quarterback and quite a few new players, but that was a good win for them down at Lucas Oil Stadium. But other than that, I think we saw quite a few of the top teams that are expected to be on top. For the most part, took care of business on Friday.
Coming up this week, what's some of the bigger matchups that you're anticipating? What's the game you're covering?
Well, Brownsburg Cathedral should be, interesting. Cathedral may, they may smash them. I don't know. I mean, they're really good. They're probably better defensively than I thought they were going to be. They do have a sophomore quarterback who hasn't, made his first start on Friday. I thought he looked pretty good. Danny O'Neill, who people will probably know here in the next year or so more about who he is. He'll be a Division I prospect player, but he's 15 years old right now. Got a big arm, and I think he showed why he can be that type of player in the future. But I thought he played really well. So that'll be that's probably maybe the most interesting game on Friday, as far as those teams don't necessarily play each other that often. So another 6A opponent for Cathedral to go up against. Kind of running down the list, Decatur Central, Center Grove is one to keep an eye on. I think Center Grove probably will roll, but Decatur's got some athletes. We have a couple of games that are off the schedule now. Whiteland and Lawrence North are supposed to play each other. Two really good teams. Lawrence North had to cancel that game, so they're off until they're planning to play next week. Mentioned Bishop Chittard. They go to Warren Central. That's kind of a different matchup. Should be kind of a fun game to see a 3A team play a really good 6A team. Fishers Pike, Hamilton Southeastern, North Central. Detroit King goes to Carmel, which will be interesting. Carmel got a really nice win over Trinity last week. A good win for the state. Anytime you go out of state, I think that's a good sign. That's about it. New Pal goes to Brebeuf. That should be a pretty good game. Ron Colley, Franklin Central, but not a ton of really, what I would say marquee matchups in week 2 necessarily. We'll have more next week. I think that'll be better games, but a few good ones there for this week.
Yeah, looking forward to the rankings are coming out, which now they've become the rankings are always fun, but it doesn't mean as much now that everybody gets to make the playoffs. But it's just more for bragging rights. Who's the top team in the state right now? I know they've got different divisions, but in the 6A, is there a clear, definitive top team?
Oh, Center Grove. Yeah, there's no doubt. They're on a different level. They have been since last year, and like I said, I think Cathedral's maybe the next best team in the whole state. You know,
really?
But they're 5A, so you know it'd be fun to see those two, and we'll see those two match up in the regular season. I wish they would play even in the tournament, but you know, I don't know. I mean, between those two teams, I you know, after watching Cathedral beat Westfield last week, and that game was 0-0 at halftime, but it felt like Cathedral left some opportunities on the table in the first half, and then you know they kind of took care of business. You know, as the game went on, and it was 14-0, but it felt like you know it could have been a little bit more than that. You know, because of some turnovers and some things like that happened. But you know, I would say you know those two are pretty clearly, and until somebody else kind of shows that they're at that level, maybe it is Brownsburg. We'll find out. You know, when they play Cathedral on Friday, but I tend to think maybe there's a little bit of a gap between those two, probably even Center Grove, then Cathedral, and then kind of a wider gap between the 2 and 3 teams in the state.
Let's see. Ross mentions a lot of games being canceled down in Kentucky. I'm assuming that's COVID related. Haven't heard much of that up here. I haven't heard of any problems thus far. Have you?
Yeah, we've had a few. Like I said, Lawrence North's off this week. Hamilton Heights had to well, it wasn't their problem. It was North Montgomery had to cancel. So Hamilton Heights playing Bluffton this week. There's been a handful. I know Indiana the deaf school was supposed to play somebody from down that way, and they had to cancel, so they have a new opponent. I normally get some emails from guys that I know who are in refereeing, and they kind of tell me what they're hearing, and then I kind of you know bounce it off the athletic directors and see what's new. But I've heard of a few, and there were a few last week. We're pretty much I think about the same pace, if not slightly worse than last year, really, as far as that goes. There's been who else was there? West Washington, I think. Clarksville had to cancel. That's down south, of course. So South Decatur, that was the school that had to cancel for the deaf school, but they picked up a new opponent, I believe. So, you know, you see some of these schools. I know Shenandoah had to shut down for a while, but they're planning to play, I guess, this week against Heritage Christian. And then I've heard a lot from coaches who, not a lot, but a few coaches who've said, you know, we're playing, but we're down a certain amount of players, or, maybe 15 guys who can't play, but they're not necessarily varsity, things like that you hear that it's affecting teams, but not necessarily to the point where they have to call the game off, which is good and bad, I guess, because you're missing a lot of guys, but you're still at least able, the other players are able to play.
Are those considered forfeits, Kyle, this year?
Yeah, I mean, for a regular season, you it's just a no contest. I mean, you're not playing for anything anyway. It's not for a playoff. Now, if you're in a different state, you know, I do wonder what that would be, you know, because it would count towards playoffs. You know, here, I guess that's the good thing about not having the season count towards anything is it's just it's a no game on the schedule. It doesn't matter, you know, but only for your record, I guess. But you know, it's not necessary for tournament selection and seeding and whatnot. So, yeah, I would be curious what other states are doing that way. And I know, like, the Big Ten has talked about, I think very late in the process here has finally said it will be forfeits for the upcoming season. But, you know, here in the state, it doesn't really matter because you're not playing for a seeding or anything.
And then, of course, you can't. There's no mandate, I guess, for requiring vaccinations for fans to come to high school games. So that's probably something that's going to linger throughout the season.
Yeah, I can't imagine it's going to change too much, if not get a little bit worse. You know, tracking the numbers, but you know, I know if you are vaccinated, you're not bound by the contact tracing that kids who are not if you turn something into your school and say, hey, you're it happened to my son actually last week. He's a middle school kid, but we got a call or an email that, he's out quarantine, but they send that out to you just based on if you're in close contact, but he's vaccinated. So you send that back in and, it's on file there. So then he doesn't have to be quarantined. He can go back to school the next day. So that's kind of the way it is. If you submit those things to your school, they just check it, cross check it. And then if you're vaccinated, you can come right back and you're not bound by that close contact situation. So that's the key. I mean, talking to coaches, that if kids get vaccinated, then we won't have to be bound by the contact tracing stuff.
Boom, and
unless you test positive, then you're out, obviously.
And more information is coming out each day. And as far as getting children younger and younger vaccinated, we'll hopefully see that happen. No, you got to run, so we'll let you go. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you soon at a game, hopefully, and getting some Psalms cards in your hands as finally got those. So happy. But we'll be getting you send out to some Psalms restaurants here soon. Man, have fun on Friday night, Kyle.
All right, guys. Take care.
Thank you very much. Kyle Neddenriep from Indy Star joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Appreciate him joining us. Brought to you by Psalms Restaurants, of course, around the Indianapolis area, and of course here at Eagle Point. Friday night. What is your schedule like on a Friday night? Because I know what you do on Saturdays covering college football. Are you out covering high school as well?
I am. Yeah, I kind of have the same schedule as Kyle, where I go to one specific game, and I in the newspaper business, that's kind of what we have to do. Is you stick around at one game and try to get to as many as we can. And so I am this week. I believe I will be at Snyder Carroll. I was at Columbia City Churubusco last week, kind of a game between smaller schools and an outlying area, which is a lot of fun. Stands were packed. They were really excited to have football back. So that was a lot of fun as well.
Yep, looking forward to talking to Rivals national recruiting analyst Rob Cassidy the next hour about Jalen Hood-Schifino. We'll talk about Noah Clowney as well, as he's still out waiting to make a decision later this fall on where he's going to play. Jalen Hood-Schifino, of course, commits to Indiana yesterday. That gives them a great they're set at guard. I mean, they are just set at guard. So you got to feel good. If you're an Indiana fan, you have to feel good about the recruiting, number one, on where it's going. And I still think, I wish I could, and I will ask him, we're going to try to I think Jalen's going to try to join us on Friday. Still hopeful to get Ray on today. John, have you heard any more about, I guess I'll just ask you in the break about that, but any more from, see if we can get Ray Miller on today. We planned on having him coach from Montverde. We'll see if that happens, but definitely talking to Rob here in a little bit. But what these guys can add. But, man, I think the Bahamas trip, even though that they didn't see it, and I've said it all week, that we heard, you got the gist of what happened. And I think that had an impact on people. Even though it wasn't on television, maybe it had more of an impact because it wasn't on TV and you had to try harder to find out everything that happened. But I think that those games had a positive impact on Indiana's recruiting.
Yeah, I think it's extremely positive. And we've talked about that already, is that they moved up. I think 24/7, they moved up 15 spots from 20th to 5th. Rivals, they moved up a significant amount, almost 10 spots, I believe. So yeah, it's had an immediate impact. And I mean, what you have to do is you have to stack recruits on top of each other, because momentum is in the minds of recruits as well. If recruits feel like a program has momentum, then they're more likely to look at an offer from that program and take it seriously, right? And at least get the foot in the door. And then after that, your recruiting staff and your coach kind of take over and do what they do. But you have to be able to get your foot in the door. And I think the commitments of Jalen Hood-Schifino and Tamar Bates are really going to help Indiana get their foot in the door with some kids that previously wouldn't have thought of Indiana in that way, at least in the last few years.
Yeah, I think Tamar Bates specifically helped because getting to play as much as he did, contributing as much as he did, being as much a part of the success that they had down there shows potential recruits that, hey, the best players will play. Mike Whitson is going to put you on the floor if you deserve to be on the floor.
Yeah, and that's always something very important for a new coach to establish. Some coaches have hangups about not wanting to play freshmen as much, but that's rarer nowadays. And especially with Woodson coming from the NBA, that's the ethos of the NBA, right? You put the best players on the floor, but it's important to establish that if you are worthy of playing and worthy of being on the floor, when you get to IU, you're going to see the floor. And I think that's important to acknowledge as well as we go forward here, is that these guys have now seen Tamar Bates play, and they're going to get to see him play this year. And that's going to be another boost for recruiting, because I think he's going to contribute significantly.
We got to take a break. We've got lots more coming up. National analyst, Rivals national recruiting analyst Rob Cassidy is going to join us to talk about Jalen Hood-Schifino and what else may be on the table for Indiana in the future. Dylan Sinn's with us. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, Hoosier fans, whether you're yay. And anything
so Rob is at 10:20, not 10, just to clarify. I don't know if you're expecting him up next or not.
No, that's why I was saying in the next hour.
And then I let Ray know he could come at 10. I haven't heard back from him since. If not, we can maybe just schedule him for another time. I'm not sure what was going on, though.
Yeah, he's not really even responded to my text today, I don't think.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? I'm going to go ahead and double check with Rob Cassidy since we're 20 minutes out. Don't want to have another issue.
Oh, man, that one hurts. I was really looking forward to talking to him. I've never had anybody have problems. So it must have been his own.
Yeah, because it sounded like he was clicking on the link whenever I was on the phone with him, and he's like, "Oh, my camera's coming up, something," and then he was like, "Thank you," and then we got the phone, and I sat there and waited, and nothing ever happened. So I don't know.
Dylan, anything you got going on?
Yeah, I mean, basically just Tin Caps this week, high school football on Friday. The biggest thing is the high school football. The Journal-Gazette does a great job. We try to get to as many games as we can. And I think we do personally, I think we do a really good job of local coverage. So whenever you want to shout that out, if people want to know about Northeast Indiana football, we have it covered, and we do stuff in the outlying areas as well, all the way out to Adams County. So
I'll let you shout that out when we come back.
All right, great.
You'll do a better job of it than I will.
All right.
Do you cover trying to think of the IU commit from Fort Wayne? DJ Moore?
DJ Moore, of course. He's at Snyder. I'll actually be watching him this week. They're playing Carroll, and I will be there. So, IU has a lot of commits has a lot of players from Fort Wayne, and they're all on the offensive line.
That's very interesting.
Yeah,
since basketball can't do well up in that part of the state for some reason.
They cannot. No, I don't know why, but
it's too cold. You can't throw the ball up there. It's too cold. So you have to run the ball.
I have heard that Fort Wayne is the only Fort Wayne or Northeast Indiana.
Hey,
really,
we got 10 seconds. Sorry.
Okay.
Eagle Point in Bloomington, then stay for dinner at Sam's Clubhouse. Sam's Restaurants, professionals in the art of food and drink.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer.
Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back. It's Hump Day. Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Dylan Sinn with me from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. We were just talking in the break about IU recruits, football players from the Northeast Fort Wayne area, and Dylan pointed out that they're mostly offensive linemen. And I'm like, well, that's very interesting, but it didn't take me long to realize it's just too damn cold up there to throw the ball, so you have to run the ball all the time. So maybe that's why.
Yeah, maybe that is the reason. But yeah, they have Randy Holtz from Snyder. They have Luke Wigginton from Bishop Dwenger. They have Vinny Fiacable from Bishop Dwenger. And now they're going to have DJ Moore, assuming he signs, which it seems like he will. They have DJ Moore from Snyder coming in the 2022 class. So yeah, it's all offensive linemen going there to IU. And we do have some passing offenses up here in Fort Wayne, Carroll, especially with Jeff Becker, the South Dakota State commit at quarterbacks. That's a pretty prolific passing offense as well. But yeah, it's an offensive line bonanza here in Fort Wayne, and IU is getting a lot of those guys.
Yeah, if he's going to South Dakota State, man, the Jackrabbits, I think that's all they do is throw the ball.
Yeah,
Well,
he's absolutely prolific up there, Carroll.
Isn't that where Kalen DeBoer was?
Kalen DeBoer, that's a good question. I'm not sure. Was he at one of the Dakotas before he was at Fresno State?
I think so. It looks like Coach Ray Miller is going to be joining us here in a second from Montverde. Hey, Coach, how are you, sir?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. How are you doing? Got Coach Ray Miller from Montverde Academy. He's trying to jump on here with us. Looking dapper, by the way. Got the tie going. Man, looking good today. John, you got his audio worked out?
Yeah, so I mean, everything's set correctly on mine. I'm not sure. There may be something that he needs to turn on his laptop.
But I can barely hear. I can hear him a little bit, it seems like.
Yeah, I heard him a second ago.
We'll let him.
This is all good. I can edit this out of the radio version of the show, so it's fine.
Okay. We'll keep trying to work on that. I think we're having a little problems hearing you, Ray. Is there a mic setting there at the bottom?
I can hear him a little bit now.
Okay, is that any better?
There you go.
That's better, yeah.
Okay.
How are you doing, first of all, Coach?
I'm doing great. How are you?
We're doing fine. Dylan Sin is with me from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette as well. Jim Coyle here from Indiana Sports Beat Radio. One of your players, of course, Jalen Hood-Schifino, big signee for Indiana. The Hoosiers yesterday committing there. A great get for them. But we've heard all about what kind of a player he is from the outside. You've seen him play for years and been with him. What's he like as a player?
The first thing that Jalen is, he's a great person. He's a very, very good leader. And as a basketball player, he's a very unselfish guard who wants to help his teammates be the very best they can be while helping himself. He's a winner. He's a tough guy, and he's a great defender and a rebounder.
And those are all incredible things to hear because it has nothing to do with basketball. It starts as the person, as the first thing you said. And man, that is everything, because that will guide everything that you're going to do on and off the court, which comes to ground. So that is incredible to hear. And I talk about kids that come out of places like Montverde. It's not a high school. It's not a normal high school. These guys they're focused. They have a mindset that is just different. And it's different to a business setting almost of sorts, of sports business setting, which is a smarter in today's age. It's ahead of the curve now.
Yeah, that is correct. Montverde Academy has been around since 1912. And our school is really, really diverse. We have kids here from over 90 different countries. It's an international boarding school. And we are, we try to help our guys develop and our girls develop into leaders of the future. This is about their education. This is about whatever their sport may be. But it's also about being leaders in the community and being leaders in business. And that's why our guys and girls really excel at the levels that you've seen across the board.
I know it's very demanding down there, and it's very exclusive. Not everybody can come there, play there. How do you get to play, be a part of that program in Montverde or any programs like that?
Well, one of the great things we've been very fortunate over the last 10 or so years to have established yourself as the leader in high school basketball. And as with any other elite situations, there are kids around the country and around the world who are interested in being a part of something like this. Their parents seek us out for academics as well as for athletics. Our developmental programs here at Montverde is second to none. And that's one of the reasons why we've been so fortunate, because kids like Jalen Hood-Schifino and his family wanted to be a part of this and have gone above and beyond to make sure that they're prepared to enter into an environment like this and succeed.
Dylan?
Yeah, Ray. We've heard a lot, and I wanted to get back to something you said earlier about Jalen. Is that he's a great defender? We've heard a lot about that in the last 24 hours here, and how good of a defender he is. Can you tell us a little more about that and what makes him so dominant on that side of the ball?
Well, one thing is about 6'5", 6'6", and he weighs a solid at least 210. He's a grown man, okay, and he's a very physical player, and he's just grown into that mindset that he's just not going to allow you to do what you want to do on the floor, and he's taking that personal. Okay, he's been a kid that for years have never been in his mind not given the type of credits that he thinks he's due, and he plays with a chip on his shoulder.
Mike Woodson, of course, it is going to be in his first year at Indiana. Obviously, any doubts of his recruiting have been washed away, but he has got such a knowledge of basketball and a knowledge around him. What was it about Indiana that you saw for Jalen Hood that was attractive to him?
Well, Jalen has been recruited by Kenya Hunter for quite some time. Kenya was at a different school prior to going to Indiana. I've known Kenya for a very long time, and he's always had an interest in Jalen. After he got to Indiana, he kept on recruiting Jalen. They had a coaching change. He stayed consistent with that prospect. And the fact that you've hired a coach in Coach Woodson, who is a former NBA coach, I think those things really appeal to Jalen and his family, to be around someone who has really been committed to him, and then having the opportunity to play for a coach who has been where he's trying to get to.
Dylan?
Yeah, we've talked a lot about Jalen and kind of his personality and how good of a kid he is. What kind of leader has he been on the team during his time at Montverde, and how good can he be in his senior season this year?
We got some noise in the background here. Well, as a leader, last year when Jalen got here, he was learning, and he had great leaders to learn from. Caleb Houston, who's now at Michigan, Ryan Nemhart, who's at Creighton, Langston Lovetis at Baylor. Those guys were our senior leaders last year, and he had a chance to work and live with those guys and learn from them about what it meant to be a leader at Montverde. You can be leaders in other areas, but at Montverde is such a unique atmosphere, is such a great atmosphere for young people, that just being a part of the culture of Montverde is something that you have to learn and grow into. And he took last year as a year that he developed a lot. His on-court ability, his off-court ability, his classroom ability, all improved over that year. And now he's prepared to help younger guys move forward in the same way.
And how is Jalen is, when you get guys like that, you can see leadership qualities in them, especially when there are freshmen around. I'm always interested and fascinated to watch a senior with a freshman and how they are with those guys. How is Jalen, because you mentioned in leadership qualities, how has he been with the younger guys?
Well, for instance, this year he's roommate with a younger kid, a sophomore. Okay, and I am responsible sometimes for trying to figure out personalities and who fits best with whom from a living standpoint. And I chose Jalen to be one of our leaders in that regard with this young man. And after they met their first opportunity to meet in the dorm, he called me and he said, Coach, I really like this kid. This is a kid that is hungry to learn. This is a kid that needs to have a mentor. And what I've learned about Jalen over the last 3 years that I've known him, I've watched him how he treats his mom and his little sister. Okay. And for those reasons, I thought he would be a perfect fit for this young man. And I tell you, there are not a lot of kids that have that level of respect for people around him as he does, especially when having a younger sister that's probably 8 or 9 years old, and how he listens to her and how he interacts with her and how he makes sure that she's happy. At one of the earlier his sophomore year, he wanted to come here. Okay. But he stayed back in North Carolina because he felt that he was not yet ready to leave his younger sister and his mom, because he felt that he needed to be there as a big brother and someone as a male figure to help with making sure that his sister became who she's become.
That's pretty incredible, because the level of maturity there is beyond his years already. It's maybe beyond my years, unfortunately, but it's just incredible to hear a kid that possesses that, because it's such a it's more rare, unfortunately, than it is common today. But and it does it so well because the game has now changed. And by the game, I mean everything that goes with it. NIL, the expansion. We're talking about college realignment and all that stuff. Everything continues to change, and you really need to have a level head and level-headed people around you.
Well, that is so true. I mean, our society has changed so much, and Jalen is prepared to, take each step, one step at a time, in his leadership, in his work, in his dedication. And I tell you, I think the University of Indiana has gotten a really, really great kid and a great leader for their future. And I think that once he gets there, he's going to hit the ground running like he did when he got here. Okay. And you'll find that in his work ethic. You'll find that in just the way that he carries himself. And he's an extremely respectful person and a very respected person.
Dylan?
Yeah, I guess going off of that, you talk about all these qualities that he has right now. What are you hoping to see from him this season, his last season of high school basketball, and how can he get better before he goes off to college?
It's a great question. I think that just having the responsibility of being our leader on the floor is going to be another challenge that he needs to overcome. Last year, he had some buffers around him. This year, he's a guy that is going to be on the floor much more than he was last year. And we anticipate him being able to take that level of responsibility, be an extension of Coach Boyle onto the floor, and being a safe haven for his teammates to look to for leadership and direction.
Is it better? Are you happy for him that he's gotten his selection out of the way before the season so he can focus on where he wants to focus and not have to deal with the outside stuff?
Absolutely. He and I had a conversation probably about a month ago where we discussed the timeline of making his decision. And I just reminded him of how difficult it is to manage all the stuff that you have to manage here at Montverde, the younger kids that are coming in, the practices, the games, the academic rigors that you have here at Montverde, and also having to field calls from 5 schools, 7 schools, and each school having at least 3 coaches that are calling you, then that really makes your day and your life hectic. Okay. So I try to explain to him that he needed to look forward to putting this thing behind him as soon as possible. And the other part is you don't want to miss an opportunity that you really want, because the longer these kids wait to make a decision, the coaches have to do their job. They have to make sure that they have someone that is going to be on their team. So they might not be able to wait on you forever. So if you find a place that you really, really think is the best place for you, go ahead and make the decision if you're so inclined, and get that behind you.
Coach Ray Miller, I cannot thank you enough for taking some time to join us. I hope that we get to talk to you a lot, because that means there's more great recruits coming from Montverde, which is just a superb facility. That how many the draft 7 off of your, was it 7 kids have been drafted off the last team?
Well, we had 7 kids in the last draft. We had 4 kids drafted in the first round from the 2020 team. and 3 of those guys were drafted in the lottery.
That's pretty good. That's not bad. Coach Ray Miller from Montverde Academy, I cannot thank you enough. Like I said, I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day. Thank you, sir.
You are so welcome. Great being on with you.
Thank you very much, Ray Miller, Coach Ray Miller from Montverde Academy. Joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat, we've got Rob Cassidy, the Rivals National Recruiting Analyst, coming up next. We'll be back with that here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Whether you're looking...
Oh, and it comes together. That's okay.
That was great. They are very high on that kid.
Hello, Rob.
Hello.
How are you, brother?
I'm okay, man. It's, today's one of those days. It's rankings day. So it's and Amani's committing, and it's like the busiest day of my year. It's been pretty crazy. So,
well, I still don't think I'm ranked, so we're good.
Not yet. We'll put you in this one too. See if anybody notices.
I'm a 1-star, baby.
Let's see if anyone knows. People are too busy cussing at me today anyway to notice anything else. So these days are always great because it's just people that I don't really know that well that have found my phone number will call and just cuss me out. So that's really nice.
It's so funny how they get worked up on that.
I was going to say,
it's amazing because. But here's the I understand the AAU coaches doing it because they're advocating for their guys. But it's the college coaches that get mad about it because, they'll go in public and say they don't care about this stuff. But if they don't care, then why are they yelling at me? It's one or the other.
I do wonder how much things would change if the NCAA let college coaches talk about individual recruits before they sign. I feel like that would open up a free-for-all of coaches just talking about this stuff all the time.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. It would be a nightmare. I understand why they limit that because then it's just shots to the media, and I would quit. I would just quit.
Well, thanks for being on. We really appreciate it. This is going to be fun.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely, 100%. I like talking about. I like Jalen's. I think he's a good kid.
Yeah, we just talked to one of his assistants in the last segment, or one of the assistants at Montverde in the last segment. They seem to be super high on this kid, not only as a basketball player, but also as just a person. They love him.
Yeah, he's always a pleasure. I don't live too far from Montverde, so I'm up there a little bit last year. He's always really good to talk to, really accommodating. I like the kid.
I agree with this comment, and I was going to say that exact thing almost. It's so funny that Van says this, but that guy didn't seem like a basketball coach. He was like a life coach, man.
No, that place, I'll tell you, it's not just basketball either. I don't know if you guys have ever been down there, but Francisco Lindor went there. They got their baseball team is usually all eventual MLB players. That place is like a IMG light.
Yeah.
All right, bring us back in.
LX front-wheel drive lease for just $270 a month. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer.
Come see us at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by RE/MAX Advanced Realty, Indy Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back. It's Hump Day. Dylan Sin with me from Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. And now we're joined by Rob Cassidy, Rivals National Recruiting Analyst for basketball. How are you, sir?
Gentlemen, I am great. It is another wonderful day in Miami, USA. It's good to be on.
Yeah, it's probably a lot nicer there. It's been just hot and humid here, but we don't have an ocean or a beach anywhere within sight. So we're landlocked, baby.
I don't have time to go to it these days. I might as well not have a beach anywhere in sight either. It's, maybe next week.
I hear you. Hey, we just got done talking to Ray Miller from Montverde, and Van made this comment that I agree with wholeheartedly. He seemed so much more than a basketball coach. He seemed like a life coach. Looking and talking to him, he's wearing a tie. Such a buttoned-up, professional, organization. I shouldn't call it an organization, but it's run very professionally. And that's it. And you can tell the kids that go there come from there. They're sports business professionals when they come out.
Yeah, it's definitely run like a pro place. It's like I told you off the air. It's not just basketball either. They have a baseball team full of superstars. Francisco Lindor went there. I think the volleyball team has the superstars, and they teach kids. They're there to coach and try to win, obviously, but they do also teach kids how to deal with people like us and how to present themselves in the media and how to So when they get to college, they're a little bit more ready than your kid that comes from a regular public school somewhere. Because that's what they're in school for. They're basically majoring in sports, for better or for worse. And with majoring in sports comes majoring in sports media. And I think it's probably pretty good for NLI stuff too, name and likeness, just because there's so much more polish coming out of there and you really know what to expect and kind of know how to promote yourself.
You mentioned in the break, a busy time for you. You got rankings day. You've got more commitments coming out today. What all's going on out there in the recruiting world?
Well, Amani Bates is supposed to commit today, and he was for so long the number one player in the country, reclassified. He will probably end up in Memphis today there. So that's going to be big news this afternoon. And then, we released at noon, we released the new rivals rankings, which has people, they haven't even come out yet. I already have people calling to cuss at me. So that's been great. So these days for me are always the worst days. It's about as stressful as it gets. So I'm happy to be on with you guys and not having somebody I barely know call me the F word.
Any movement for Jalen Hood-Schifino?
Yeah, he's going to move up a little bit. He's definitely going in the right direction. I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me, but I know we did slide him up based on the year he's had. He's one of the things about him is this time last year, he didn't look the same. I don't know if you guys ever got a chip, but this kid has put on muscle, and it's good weight. And it's helped him dramatically, I think, in rebounding. And also to be able to finish through traffic. He gets to his spots pretty easy. He looks like a college-ready kid now, where this time last year he did not have this body. He's muscled up and looking lean and good.
And that's what I said. The guys that come out of there, I was talking to Dylan about this earlier, they come out ready to play. They're ready-made when they get out of either whether it's IMG or Montverde. Those guys are ready to go and be impact players for teams. And I think that's exactly what this kid's going to be. I'm not saying he's going to come in and start and play 40 minutes, but his coach talked about the head that he has on his shoulders. Obviously a very smart, level-headed kid that you are going to love to have on the floor for you. That is a guy that you want at the point for you.
100%. And one of the other things that really, they have the weight program, and I think that gets celebrated a little bit, that the kids are physically ready to play. But when you're playing a schedule like they play, they don't play kids that are high school basketball players that are going to end up in fraternities, right? Like Montverde plays IMG. The gross majority of the teams they play are teams full of kids with D1 basketball players on them. So, they travel out to Washington Academy or some other basketball factory, Sunrise in Kansas, where the games aren't, so lopsided where it's like, some kid named Daniel that's going to major in engineering try to guard Jalen. Now, Jalen's going against dudes like Tamar Bates. That will end up on the college level. So I think it prepares him that way as well.
I was going to say, it sounds like he's basically playing an AAU schedule during the high school season, which, and except you're playing with the team that has like a strength program and has coaches that are going to take an interest in your development throughout the year. I think that's what you want if you're an elite high school recruit, I would assume.
Oh, 100%. It's not for everybody because, it's not high school experience. Like if you're looking to get a normal high school experience and you want to go to prom and do things that high school kids do, it's not for you. So I don't think it's for everybody. But if that doesn't interest you and you are 100% focused on basketball and you want to go to high school to become a college basketball player, these are the kind of places for you, I think.
I talked earlier too about, I don't know how much it played a part, but Indiana's performance in the Bahamas, even though it wasn't on television, everyone got the gist of what went on down there. And Tamar Bates being a freshman and how much he was able to play and how much he was able to accomplish, that showed prospective recruits that, hey, man, that Mike Whitson will put the best players on the floor. He's going to give you the opportunities.
Yeah, it's so funny to me, and I wrote this in something I wrote yesterday, I think when Jalen committed, to look back on the hire. And the big concern was, is he going to be is this older head coach that's never been a college head coach? to be able to do the things it takes to recruit at the high level. If that's the question, that question's answered, I think. I don't think he's going to, if he fails, I don't know if he's going to fail or succeed. Who knows? It's not going to be because of recruiting. I think that's clear already. He's getting into some of these recruitments where it's, he's standing toe-to-toe with guys and landing recruits that other people want, highly ranked, very good players. It's just funny to me that was the big conversation we had to have when he was hired 6 months ago or whatever.
Yeah, because the season hasn't started yet, and he has 2 recruits ranked higher than any in the previous 4 years by that other regime.
Yeah, if they start winning too, like I think you mentioned Bahamas, if they start doing that in games that count, it's just going to snowball. Indiana's got that brand. Now, has it been dormant for a while? Yes. But when you can connect the history with the present, and I think maybe Mike Woodson is probably the best guy to do that, things can snowball in a hurry for you, I think. I mean, you saw it with Michigan. It's all a matter of success and kind of what they do out of the gate.
Well, that's fascinating to me because I've wondered this, and you're a guy who talks to so many recruits and kind of gets a feel for what they want and what they value in a school. What kind of is the feeling about IU as a whole when you talk to some of these kids, and has it changed significantly since Mike Woodson was hired? Is it early? Is it too early to tell what kind of impact he has on that brand?
I think it's too early to tell right now, but it's obviously been pretty good because you can't argue with the results, right? I mean, winning the Tamar Bates sweepstakes was so big to be able to do something like that before ever even coaching a game. Now, I think just like anything else, the first season is going to matter. You can't fall on your face and expect to keep that momentum. But if you do show some upward trajectory, and then at that point you have your brand, you can talk about the history of Indiana better than anyone because you're part of the history of Indiana if you're Woodson, and you kind of can connect that history to the present for these recruits and kind of tell them about it. I think that's a tool. I mean, it's exactly the blueprint that we took with Juwan Howard here. He kind of connected that Michigan past with Michigan present. They won some games, and look at it. I mean, the whole thing snowballed.
Indiana's team recruiting right now, I know they're in the top 10. The rankings changing today. That'll probably push them up a little higher. I know in the composite, they're probably already in the top 5, but this would probably put them in the top 5 on both sides, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's an algorithm. I don't make the decision. It's, based on rankings and where kids rank that they have, and star rankings. And I don't even understand how it's calculated. But I just rank the kids, and then the algorithm takes his deal and spits it out. And that's kind of how it's always been.
Noah Clowney is another player on Indiana's list of, he's made it. Indiana made his Final Four list. So that would be a great get. I don't have a good I haven't been up to speed on him. He seems like he likes Alabama a lot, but I know he's from the South, so that may play a part in that.
Yeah, Alabama's involved there. Indiana's involved there. South Carolina is involved there to some extent with Frank Martin. I think him being from down there has kind of lended itself to those programs. He had a big summer. He's also one that's going to slide up a little bit when things update today. He's long. He's an athlete. He's not super polished right now, but he doesn't need to be, I don't think. I think he's got the tools. He's got the length. He's got the athleticism. Once he develops as a defender and kind of learns how to shoot it a little bit from the mid-range and beyond, I think that he could be a really good player.
And I think that what happens with Michael Durr, Dylan, you give Mike Woodson, no one has seen what he can do with a big guy. He was a big guy himself. And he's going to be coaching those guys. So I would think someone like Noah Clowney would be someone that Mike Woodson could recruit personally and say, hey, man, I can tell you how to do it. But I don't know how much of an impact that will have on his recruiting. But I would think that would keep him in pretty good position with Noah Clowney.
Yeah, I think go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, because he already is going to do that with Trace Jackson Davis, and that's kind of the point he's been making all year, is he's going to try to help develop Trace into a more all-around player. So maybe if Trace shows significant strides at the start of the season, that will help as well.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's going to come down to a lot of what they kind of show here just for this class. I don't think that's going to make or break the Woodson era or anything like that. But it sure can help if you come out of the gates hot, especially under a new coaching staff where everybody's kind of looking to have those questions answered. And then you start answering them right around the time that the Euro signing period hits. Things can compound, so it'll be interesting to see.
So I know you've got nothing else to do today since rankings are coming out. You're going to kick back and enjoy your day, right?
So I just have a pina colada and hang out. I don't sweat through my shirt or anything like that.
So what is it? What goes on now with rankings day? What do you have to do with all that besides the announce? Just deal with the fallout?
Yeah, so there's a lot of content to write, and then I have to go in and make sure that everything's straight in there, first of all. Like the editors input it. I go in there and make sure they don't make any mistakes. And then when we turn it live, people I know and like call and yell at me, and we have our conversations. And then other people get my phone number and call and cuss at me. I don't even check my Twitter mentions on these days because it's a disaster. So no, it's one of those days where you're done and you just want to lay down at the end of the day. But it seems like it never ends. So it's really the next 2 days. But it's it can be emotionally taxing in a way.
Yeah. What is the biggest complaint that you get from people who call you?
Well, it's the worst thing that ever happens is when somebody's dad gets my number, because it's like, look, I understand. Like, I understand advocating for your kid, and no matter how high I rank your kid, you're still going to be mad at me, So those are the worst. Like, coaches are somewhat reasonable about it, I think. And also, the relationship is important there. So, they can't be too hot-headed because we have to work together for the rest of forever. The dad of a prospect, I may never have to see again. So he can F-bomb me all he wants,
How big of an impact do you think Jalen Hood-Schifino can be on getting other recruits to Indiana?
Well, look, you had a coach on before, and he said he's one of the leaders of that team. And that is not a bad place to have your hooks in, Now, do I think that every kid from Montverde is going to start going to Indiana? No, but if he goes there, and you see this with any school, if he goes there and succeeds, all of a sudden the coaching staff there points that out to people, and they see it, and especially if he succeeds as a freshman, then things can start to kind of compound the domino effect. And this isn't a school where it's like, oh, they might have 2 or 3 Indiana level kids every 5 years. They're going to have one every year. So if you can get a pipeline in there, there are way worse places to have it.
And it reminds me of Tom Allen. I mean, that's what, in essence, he did with the state of Florida. He created a pipeline that Indiana has the most Florida players of any Big Ten team. And
listen, he took the right players too. I don't even cover Florida, and I'm running into football coaches at schools when I'm there looking at basketball players, and we'll just be making small talk, and they will mention how well Indiana recruits the state of Florida. It's so weird because they have taken guys that the in-state schools just decided they don't want, and they end up being awesome. I don't know. It's funny that he's out-scouted the state. I mean, he's outdone all these in-state schools in the last 3 years down here.
It's amazing. And then, you talk about a pipeline to Montverde. That could be another one. So, well, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today, man. I know you got lots to get to. As much as we want to make light of it, it's probably not going to be as fun a day for you as you'd like for it to be.
Yeah, keep me in your prayers. I appreciate you guys. I always enjoy coming on, though. So it's a pleasure.
Rob, I appreciate you, brother. Have a good one.
Absolutely. We'll see you guys later.
Thank you so much. Rob Cassidy, joining us from Rivals National Recruiting Analyst, talking about Jalen Hood-Schifino, Noah Clowney, and everything else along with that that goes into the recruiting. But that's some good points that Rob made. The last one there about his coach talking about the leader. I asked him how he was with the freshmen, and I wasn't thinking that when I asked that question. I was just asking from a leadership standpoint. But I didn't think about that. If they look up to him, that's exactly what that can do. Help create a pipeline, especially if Indiana succeeds. There's probably no doubt that Jalen Hood will succeed in one form or another, but you need team. It needs to be a team thing as well. There has to be success there all the way around. And if that happens, wow, that's the things that make programs turn around like that.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's really important. Is that's building momentum can really, like he said. I think the word is snowball, right? The momentum can really snowball if things start to get rolling. And as we talked about in that segment, if they win this year, they don't have to win a national championship. They don't have to go to the Final Four. Just show some signs of life, And I think that will really help things kind of just take that next step forward, because the recruiting is already going well. You start winning, that just picks up even more. And I think that's going to be important going forward.
I think we got to take one more break before we get out of here. It's been a good one, but we got more to get to. We're back with it here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio on Hump Day. Dylan Sin with me. We're back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, Hoosier fans. It
really is wild how many good players IU has gotten out of Florida that just didn't get the attention of schools in Florida, really. Like Michael McFadden, Michael Penix, Tywan Mullen, Jamar Johnson. Those are all
Michael Penix had the attention. Tennessee really, really screwed the pooch on that one.
Tennessee is – imagine how different that Tennessee might be right now if Michael Penix was there.
It would have been – they would not – Indiana would not have been in the Gator Bowl to play against Tennessee. I can tell you that.
They would not, no. I like Peyton Ramsey. I like Jack Tuttle. They were not going to lead Indiana to 8-4 that year.
Right.
So yeah, it's just so odd to me that they have gone down and just found so many diamonds in the rough down there. I mean, Jamar Johnson was ranked in he was like the 1100th ranked player in the country. He went to IU, played immediately, was first team All Big Ten, and then got drafted. That's ridiculous to me.
I mean, the job that they have done finding, developing with a guy that has never, and I hate we're wasting all this, been a collegiate head coach. It just shows you the right person can get the job done.
And it's crazy to think about, because to me, the two best hires of the last decade in college football are a guy who had been a defensive coordinator at South Florida and a guy who had been a wide receivers coach in Dabo Swinney. Like those are the two best hires kind of relative to replacement level of the last decade in college football. And neither of them was the hot name. Neither of them was anyone you would think about. It just comes down to fit generally. And those guys just fit where they are better than literally anyone else.
And Tom Allen will go down. Man, we're wasting some good stuff.
Yeah, just stop right now. You only got a few minutes anyway.
But my ADHD brain won't come back.
Oh, God.
You making a note of where to pick up? All right, I'll bring us back in.
And something for everyone. Sam's Restaurant in Fishers has homemade coffee cakes and much more. Sam's Place in Broad Ripple has wings, tender steaks, and seafood. Sam's Ale House in Carmel and on 86th Street in Indy have a long list of craft beers and all of the right foods to go with. Plan a day on the links at Eagle Point in Bloomington, then stay for dinner at Sam's Clubhouse. Sam's Restaurants, professionals in the art of food and drink. This segment is brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Now back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back. It is Hump Day. Dylan Sin from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette with me. We have spoken with Coach Ray Miller from Montverde Academy. Just got off with Rob Cassidy, Rivals National recruiting analyst, and talked a little bit about Indiana potentially developing a pipeline to Montverde, and it got us on the discussion of Tom Allen because that's what he has done. And Dylan, you mentioned that he is, you could think, one of the two best hires of the decade.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I look at it in college football is the two best hires of the last decade in college football are Tom Allen and Dabo Swinney. And it's, if you look at it, it's a guy who'd been a defensive coordinator at South Florida and a guy who'd been the wide receivers coach at Clemson. And those are, so neither of them was the hot name. Neither of them was the guy who everyone was looking at and saying, you need to go out and get this guy, because IU was never going to get one of those guys. Clemson probably wasn't. And so it just goes to show that you need a guy who fits. a guy who really believes in what you're trying to do. And that can sometimes make or break a program. And finding one of those guys is not easy at all. I mean, Indiana and Clemson both kind of stumbled backward into those guys. But it's turned out to be the exact perfect fit for both of those programs, and the results speak for themselves. And I think it's really interesting as we talk about every offseason, the coaching carousel spins, and you talk about who's going to be the next guy who's moving up from a mid-major into a high major that's going to make a big difference. And you never really know. And those are two of the best hires of the last decade, and neither of them would have been thought of that way at the time.
Yeah, and Dabo, at least Clemson had some history. You know, it's not like you never heard of Clemson before. They've had their deals. Was it Pat tie-dye, baby? Or no, he was at Auburn.
That's Auburn. Clemson won a national title in the 80s. I can't remember exactly who the coach was, but I should probably know that. But yeah, they won at least one title in the 80s.
But in Indiana, basically, their history in the 40s and a blip in the 60s. Well, and the 80s, but a little
the Bill Mallory years were decent. Yeah, exactly.
But they were never where Indiana is right now. Because even though Indiana was competing for the Big Ten title that one year, I think 91 maybe, when they lost to Michigan State, but the Big Ten was not what the Big Ten is now. Ohio State was not the juggernaut they are now. And that's saying something, because Ohio State was good, but a good program, but they have elevated. There's a difference now. They're like 6A to the 5A. So what Tom Allen...
Penn State wasn't even a member of the conference back then. I don't think Penn State joined in 1993, maybe? Am I remembering that correctly?
I think so, yeah. And then so Tom Allen has done it at a place where, man, people have tried. Big name people have tried and failed. So, and he's done it in a way that would have never dreamed of. So, yeah, and you still may have to give it to Dabo, though, because national championships speak loudly.
Right.
But that's why you have to believe it is possible. Now, I think it helps that Dabo also plays in a very weak ACC conference, and it wasn't always quite that weak. Louisville was good for a minute during this run, but they have not had to face the kind of brick walls that Indiana has to face everywhere. Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State, Iowa. They don't have to do that kind of thing, and it helps when you can pile wins up.
Yeah. I think that's kind of important. Is that Clemson, they hit the ACC at such a time. Dabo, he really burst on the scene because Florida State was one of the best teams in the country when Dabo got there. And they've fallen off significantly in the last 5 to 7 years. And I think that really has opened the door for Clemson to dominate that conference. And once you're dominating your conference, people are seeing you in these big bowl games. They're seeing you in the conference title game every year. I think that really helps your recruiting, raise your profile. And Clemson, as you said, they already had a little bit of history to go along with. And so once you're dominating the ACC, you have the history to fall back on. And you have someone who cares at the top of your program like Dabo does. I do feel like that's the way you build a recruiting juggernaut, which is what they've done at Clemson.
Let's see. I saw this. It was just announced that Robin Miller passed away this morning. Journalist, motor racing journalist. Two journalists we've lost very recently. That with a very close relationship to this state of auto racing. Robin Miller and Bob Jenkins just a week or two ago. So sad to see that. Just wanted to make sure we made that announcement. For the race fan.
Yeah. Always tough to lose someone who cared. Like, again, we talk about caring. Those guys cared so much about racing and bringing it to people. And it's always sad to lose someone like that.
Major League Baseball coming down to the dog days. Daggone it. The Reds had a shot. They have a shot. They've got a 3-game set with Milwaukee. They lost last night. So that doesn't help the cause as they're fighting to get into the playoffs with the over the Padres, who are fighting for that wild card spot. But man, gosh, they could have made up some ground with the Brewers, man. But they're too far back of the Brewers, I think, for a division race. But you got to stay up there, man. That the race with the Padres is back and forth. I think they may have a game lead, but that may have evaporated with that loss last night.
Yeah, I mean the Padres have really struggled in recent weeks here. Their offense outside of Tatis is really struggling. Their pitching is kind of coming apart here as the season goes on. And they might be one of those teams that might be maybe a year ahead of schedule. So we'll see whether the Reds have a little more staying power than San Diego does. But yeah, it's tough. That Brewers team, they are not. On paper, they don't seem like a particularly good team, but they have really gelled. And they have so much confidence in themselves. It seems like they do something almost every game where it's like, wow, that this team should not be this good. And they have just put together this terrific season that on paper should not have been possible. So good for the Brewers, and the Reds are going to have they have some work to do here going forward.
The Reds are at Milwaukee again tonight, but fortunately the San Diego is playing the Dodgers, division leaders. And also I think San Diego has the toughest schedule in all of baseball the rest of the way. I heard that last night. So
yeah,
if you're a Reds fan,
I mean that makes sense. They have two of the best teams in baseball in their division, and you play divisional opponents for the most part down the stretch. So they're going to have a lot of games against the Dodgers and Giants in September.
Let's see. Wow. Major League Baseball seeking player input on baseball prototypes that could be long-term sticky stuff fix.
Huh.
Major League Baseball has been disseminating prototypes of tackled baseballs to solicit player feedback. That's odd. So it already has tack on it?
So it's maybe that sounds like what they're saying. That seems odd to me.
Why?
But I mean,
why do they need? I don't understand. Has pitching gotten more difficult in the last year? Did it change?
I do remember when they first cracked down on the sticky stuff. There were pitchers who hurt their arms because they had to grip the ball harder than they were used to. But if you give them an offseason to adjust, I don't see why you would need to go back to the sticky stuff. And doing it in the middle of the season was a mistake. I agree with that. But I don't know why you'd have to go back to it if you gave them an offseason to adjust their motion. It doesn't make much sense to me.
Yeah, but we'll see what they come up with. Rich Hill confirmed that the New York Mets reviewed the prototypes about a week and a half ago. The Dodgers pitchers were also shown the balls while playing in New York, and the San Francisco Giants are expected to receive them during their series against the Mets this week as well. Kevin Brockway, I love that.
Well, doing that with the Mets seems like a terrible idea. The Mets have one of the worst track records for keeping pitchers healthy that you could possibly imagine. They've done a terrible job of that for decades now. And so getting their input on what's going to keep pitchers healthy doesn't seem like it would be helpful at all.
Although the current process is still in the preliminary stages, pre-tackled baseballs or balls treated with a substance that gives them a slightly tacky feel for easier grip have been a source of speculation and investigation for several years now. Major League Baseball has been experimenting with sticky baseballs that could be introduced in conjunction with enforcement of its foreign substance ban since 2016. Didn't know they were working on that. I really didn't.
Yeah. It seems like there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that we don't really see until it gets into the later stages, it feels like.
Well, this certainly is not going to be better for batters. I mean, but
no, I mean, the playing field is already so skewed toward pitchers at this point because everyone's throwing so hard and everyone's swinging big. So there's just so many strikeouts as it is. That's tough.
Pete says that so they must have used this in the Olympics. Sounds like the ball was used in international play in the Olympics. All pitchers in the Olympics love the ball. Very good grip. I'm sure they do. That's the thing. I'm sure they do love it. Let me throw this slider a lot easier, or a lot easier to throw a curveball when it's sticking to your fingers. But I don't know how. It's obviously, I guess Major League Baseball has to do something to get rid of guys using baseballs that you could probably hold on your hand like that because they're that sticky. where this won't do that. It just lets you hold it, which maybe it prevents injuries to arms. Maybe that helps, or is it going to go the other way? I don't know.
Well, I think the idea is behind it. I would think is probably let's give a little bit on this issue so that we don't have players rampantly cheating, and we're not forced to cut down on that and suspend our good pitchers, because it seemed like everyone was using the sticky stuff. So
and if you get to a spot to where you have a ball, there's zero tolerance for having any sticky substance on you at all. Zip.
Right. Yes. And you don't get people say, well, it was just sunscreen and rosin, blah, 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 blah. Exactly. Right. So you don't need that. That doesn't become necessary if you have a ball that's pre-sucked. I would assume that is the rationale, but they need to do something to level out the playing field so that to encourage players to put the ball at play or something, because there are just so many strikeouts nowadays that it's turning off fans because there's just not as much action as there used to be.
Let's see. Pete says he doesn't think the ball has added tack more in the natural. I think it's got a little something though. It's got something to it to make it grippable. Yeah, it's definitely not like I was talking about. Not like in the old days with Lester Hayes and the Stickum. He had it covered. It was greatest football picture of all time. Look up Lester Hayes. He's covered in Stickum from he's got out of his helmet, his arms. He puts it all over his jersey, his pants. He would have it everywhere until they banned it. And they banned that as well. Everything, it's like NASCAR racing. They keep changing the rules because guys, they call it innovating. They keep innovating, so they have to change the rules. And the guys innovate around the rules. And that's in all of sports. It's a pitcher trying to find a better grip. The NASCAR team trying to find a little more downforce. And there are all the rules for all these sports. And these guys push those rules to the limit. And sometimes over the limit. The old saying, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
Yeah, every once in a while, there's that line, and they go as close to that line as humanly possible, and sometimes they go a little bit over. We saw that was in baseball earlier this season. We saw guys that went so far over the line that baseball had to address it. There was no other way. There was just so much spin on the ball. It was impossible for baseball to continue on without something changing drastically. And it was just impossible. The hitters couldn't hit. That's why there was 7 no-hitters in the first 2 months of the season, and there's only been 1 in the last 3 months since they changed the rule. Like, it was obvious that it became so much easier to hit as soon as they made that change.
Well, Glenn barely made waving his nose flag on the deadline.
Yeah.
He's my Washington State flag. I don't know if you've been on with him before.
Oh, yeah.
For those of you that don't know, there's a college game day. There's been a Washington State flag waved there since they started, I think, right? Or
pretty close to it. Yeah. It's been out there for a while.
Glenn is my Washington State flag, man. He barely made it under the deal today. As we're about to wrap it up. But Van says baseball is such a statistic sport. When they change the ball, etc., how does that affect the historical view of a player's career? Exactly. I mean, it changes, but I don't know, because the guys that were pitching before, they're using something a lot. Those guys, unless you're like Nolan Ryan, who doesn't need it because he's just throwing fastballs. He's not using spin. He's just throwing the ball hard. He just has the ability to throw it hard. Does someone like Aroldis Chapman now? Who had so much power in his arm, but that's not the Aroldis Chapman of 10 years ago. I saw him last night pitching for the Yankees and looked up. There's Aroldis Chapman. Boom, single. I'm like, ouch. So, yeah. But you think back, Phil Niekro, those guys, the spitball. Man, they've been using stuff since the dawn of time. So this is nothing new. So it's a good question, Van. They're all using. If they're throwing balls that spin, I promise you they have something. And I'm not saying it's necessarily illegal, but their hands are not just loose and They don't have lotion on their hands. I can promise you that. So
I mean, the problem was that Major League Baseball looked the other way on it and kind of did a wink, wink, nudge, nudge thing for so many years, and then they turned around. I think that's what pitchers were upset about, is that they encouraged it for so long with just kind of looking the other way, and then the guy in Major League. But yeah, it's just to kind of do a 180 on it when they realized it was hurting the game. That's tough in the middle of the season. So.
Yeah, who was it? I forget one of the pitchers. We got to go, but he would stand out there on the mound, and man, he's touching everywhere like he's giving signals. Boy, just trying to throw him off. Where's he getting it from? But man, a fun day today. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Big thanks to Dylan, of course, from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. Dylan, before we give that shout out of football coverage.
Yeah, that's what we have going on for the most part going forward here is high school football coverage. We do a terrific job, if I may say so, of covering Northeast Indiana football. We get to a ton of games. And so if you want any information on Northeast Indiana football, we get to the outlying areas as well. We get all the way out to Adams County for some of the smaller schools. So yeah, if you want coverage of that area, there are not many that do it better than we do. So go to journalgazette.net/sports and you'll find a ton of coverage of that.
We'll get that up next time too, John. We'll get that up there. Big thanks to Coach Ray Miller from Montverde Academy as he took time to join us, and Rob Cassidy, Rivals national recruiting analyst, as well as we talk about the commitment of Jalen Hood-Schifino. More coming up. I think we're going to have Jalen Hood on Friday, so we'll look forward to that. More back tomorrow, of course. Dustin Schutte, Chris Denari, Matt Taylor, see what else we can get going. Big thanks to all of you guys. Without you, we've got nothing to do here, and John, the producer, as well. We're back tomorrow to do it again. Go out and do something nice for somebody. Until then, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.